So Priyadarshan Dharma Rajan. In his circle, people call him Priyan. So you're also free to, use this name as long as he's here. So very interesting person. Has a doctoral degree from the University of Calicut, Kerala, and his research interests include conservation and sustainability science, insect biosystematics and conservation policies. A trained taxonomist and ecologist, Priyan has described more than 150 species and several new genera of insects, new to science, and has authored 5 books, more than 100 research papers, and several popular articles. Being a conservation and sustainability researcher and practitioner, Priyan tries to develop a new conservation paradigm, which is deliberative democratic conservation, DDC. I like this name, Priyan. For the effective conservation and sustainability in the human dominated landscapes, DDC is an approach that seeks to formulate conservation policies and priorities by fostering consensus through deliberations among stakeholders and establish enduring, efficient, and inclusive institutional mechanisms for addressing conservation and sustainability challenges. His efforts in the conservation of Vembanad Lake, Kerala, the largest tropical wetland ecosystem on the southwest coast of India, and a designated Ramsar site have been acclaimed by conservationists all over the world. So currently working as a senior fellow at the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, ATREE, Bangalore. I think we all know about this place. They do wonderful work. And this is the place, which interacts the most to the people who are directly involved at all the levels. He's a member of various national and international scientific and academic bodies and on the board of editors of many journals. Today, he's with us and he will be talking about the conserving the less charismatic, okay? Because the definition of this word is very, very trivial, like yesterday you have been hearing this word a lot. He is going to do some dissection around this word, okay? Strategies for saving insect diversity for the human well-being. And thank you so much, Priyan, taking time for us. He has come from Bangalore, right here with us. Yeah, please come.
Good morning to all. Whether it's a child or an adult, we always like to hear some stories. Let us start from a small story. Like any other fable starts, once upon a time, there was a king, and he had a daughter, and her mother passed away when she was very young. So the king married again, and as usual, as all in the customary stories, the stepmother was very cruel to this girl. So stepmother tried to avoid this girl. She left the girl in a jungle with a lot of lions and other wild animals. Somehow, the wild animals helped her, took her back to the palace. Because she made several attempts. Finally, she made a small wooden boat with a mulberry wood and left the girl into the boat and put her into the sea. This is not an Indian story. This story is from Japan. Japan is a place where there are a few temples at different places for worshipping the silkworm, the silk moths. The story continues like this. A Japanese fisherman happened to find this boat with a child. He tried to feed the girl. She was not accepting any food. So he kept her in the back in the box and kept a lot of mulberry leaves for her to eat. She shrunk. Finally, she started spinning a cocoon and she became a silk moth. And she again taught the people there how to spin silk. Until Second World War, silk was one of the most foreign currency earning income for Japan. That is the reason why even today, in many places of Japan, silkworm is worshipped. This temple dedicated for the silk moth. Similarly, in Egypt, dung beetles are worshipped. They consider the dung beetles are incarnation of Khafre, the god which draws the sun from east to west. Like how do they roll the dung balls? So you can see pendants, seals, and murals in the tombs of many of the pyramids in Egypt. So this is how you might have seen the dung beetles rolling the dung. How many beetles you see? 2? Sure? We can see a small beetle following it, falling down. Would you notice that? So that's a brood parasite, another dung beetle. So the smaller dung beetle follows the dung rollers. And as soon as they bury the dung ball, they lay their eggs too. Most of the times, both the host and the parasitic dung beetle, the brood parasite, also develop side by side because the parasite is a smaller one. Sometimes if the population is more, even they may outcompete the host. What is, oh, why a lot of cattle all of a sudden? From the dung beetles to cattle. How many cattle we have in India? You know about the human population, it's about 145 crore. India has about 53 or 55 crores of cattle. And how much grasses or greens they eat every day? And how much dung they produce? It's estimated that a cattle herd produces almost a ton dung every year. Just think about the 53 crores of cattle producing a lot of dung. What happens to all those? And it is estimated that almost 8 to 9% of the GHG emissions, maybe a little more than whatever the motor cars are producing, is produced by our cattle through the dung or through the digestive process plus dung. This is a older story. After Europeans colonized Australia, they carried the cattle also. After a few years, there were a lot of insect-borne diseases impacting the people. The government set up a commission of entomologists. Why the insect-borne diseases are spreading all across Australia? And that committee came up with some interesting findings. There were huge dung heaps all over Australia from the cattle they introduced, the Europeans introduced to Australia. Why those dung beetles? There are no dung beetles there. It's the dung beetles who bury the dung. They breed on the dung. They bury it and they reduce the GHG emission, GHG emissions from the dung. Here, what happened is the native beetles of Australia were not adapted to feed or bury the dung of the cattle. They were only used to the pellet type of dung of kangaroos. So they decided to introduce dung beetles from Hawaii and Asia and Europe. They introduced about 45 species of dung beetles to Australia, and in a few years the problem was solved, and it is now again repeated in the New World, the Americas, where the Europeans carried their cattle to. This is a recent study which from across about 20 countries, including my team, about 35 team was involved in this study. They were studying the impact of dung beetles, dung beetle diversity and composition on addressing the dung issue. So we found that it's not just the abundance matter, is the functional diversity also of dung beetles also matter. What is the functional diversity of dung beetles? There are different types of dung beetles. Some bury the dung, some roll the dung away from the source, some breed on the dung itself. Similar functional diversity, species diversity are also as important as the abundance of dung beetle in addressing the dung problem. So if we have to have efficient management of the cattle dung, we have to have different types of dung beetle from different functional groups in abundance. Think about all the vegetational material, carcasses, all produced, all need to be recycled. Most of the nutrient cycling is carried out by insects, dung beetles, termites, etc. How much of the leaf area is eaten by the herbivores? Who is the biggest herbivore? What do you say? Who is the biggest herbivore? Elephant? No. Elephant is the biggest herbivore. Any doubt? But I would say is the insects. Insects eat up about 5 to 8% of the vegetational mass produced by the plants. You just go out and look at every tree. It may be difficult to find at least 5% of those plants which is not eaten by an insect. So this from a agricultural farm. What happens if the insects are suppressed? Usually we put a lot of pesticides. Well, killing the insects, what may happen? Whether altogether it is good for the plants or not. So this study says that if the insects are suppressed, other plants may also grow. Thus it can even impact the productivity. So it's a long history. The plants and insects, the angiosperms and insects, they all evolve together. So what happens? It's a part of a network. If any part of it is broken, it's going to impact the whole of the system. So insects eat up about 18 to 20% of our food crop. And if the temperature increases, that damage is going to increase by 10 to 25% for every degree rise of temperature. So many times I have to get into an argument with my friends who are promoting organic farming. I'm an ecologist. That doesn't mean that I am promoting organic farming. If we continue with the organic farming, we don't have any system where we can assure the productivity. The crop productivity is important. Though organic farming is so popular, still we don't have any clear scientific agronomic practice for any of these crops to be organically cultivated. So the first priority should be to feeding the empty stomach to assure the productivity. In 1950s, India's population was only about 50 or 55 crores, and our average life expectancy was about 56 years. When the population was only 56 crores, half the stomachs were starving. After the Green Revolution, with all these pesticides, chemicals, everything, the population has increased to 140 crore, thanks to the modern medicine and other facilities. And the number of starving stomachs are reduced to 20% or even less. So what's the issue here? Is the overuse of pesticides, abuse of pesticides and agrochemicals. We have to be more responsible about the use of agrochemicals. How do an insect see? So you are sitting here, you can pursue me, and if you, yesterday the driver came, he had no doubt in identifying me. So your photo was there on your WhatsApp. So we can identify each other. Just with the limited vision. Why I say limited vision? We can perceive only the light band within the WebGR with our 2 eyes. But how do an insect see? What's the wavelength they can perceive? How the image is processed? And we are making several attempts to match them by adding more and more cameras to mobile phones and see. Now, then lenses, now we are developing many sensors to capture light in a better way so that we'll get better representation of what we see. And we can want a part of that. So insects are a model for many things. There are AI robots which mimic the insect's capacity to smell, or the size, for movement, swarming, for traffic control, to explore the unknown places. For many things, we consider insects as a model to develop more new and new technologies. The reason is they have more experience here. Insects are here for several million years before the human beings originated. We have only we are on the earth only for a few 100,000 years. If you take the history of modern man, maximum 40,000 years, or the real modern man with the Cenozoics, maybe the human started agriculture about 13 or 15,000 years back. Most of the development what we see today is happened only after that. Insects have a lot of adaptations. What do you see in this image? Stick insect, and on the other one, leaf insect. It's a green leaf. Now you count. How many insects you can count there? There are about 30 or 32 leaf insects on that plant. So what is the tree? It's a people tree. Almost every day we see people and banyan. You know people tree and banyan tree. Most of our temples have some people trees. Banyan is all over on the roadsides. What's the color of the flower of a people tree? What is the color of the flower of people tree? Yes, they smartly hide their flowers inside the fig. Whatever you see as a fig is an inflorescence too. First, the female flowers, the stamens, become receptive again inside the small fig. The small fig has a small orifice, which is heavily guarded by a branch, by a lot of bracts, interconnected bracts. How does it get pollinated? Fig wasps. Every species of ficus, there are about 1,000 species of ficus all over India. India has about 105 species of ficus. Each of these ficus species has its own pollinator, and they never miss. They go to the right fig. And once the female insects reaches the receptive fig, they cut open. They have a saw-like structure to the mandible. They cut the bracts. In the process, sometimes they may die. They break the antenna. They move the remaining antenna to move the bracts and get into the fig. And once they reach the fig, no, the video is not working. So once they reach the fig, what they do is they take the pollen beads from the pollen basket and brush it across and pollinate the fig. And then they lay eggs to the fig ovaries. So that way, the ficus sacrifice at least part of their offsprings, a number of their offsprings for the insects. Insects and seeds develop side by side. Then first, the male insects become mature. They come out. They look for their own females. Why their own females? There are many parasites too. The parasitic fig insects lay egg from outside the fig. And there are parasites too. That's a different story. And that's how the ficus reproduce. From the ficus tree to the desert. This is from Jaisalmer. So on a summer day, you can see a small bush with a lot of flowers. How does that plant getting pollinated? There may be some bees still waiting there to pollinate the flowers, even during the hot summer days. If almost 80% of our forest trees are pollinated by insects, if all the bees go extinct on a fine morning, in another few years, most of our plants will die. Very soon, the human beings and other animals also will follow this suit. You go anywhere in the world, this is a vegetable shop look like. Where is it all? So is it coming from? Just think about the vegetable or foods we eat every day. These are all coming from different parts of the world, originated from different parts of the world. No country ever has more than 20% of the food originated from that landscape. The chili we consume today, is it Indian? The tomato, potato? No. So what do we have from the vegetables? Maybe some tubers, brinjal. And many of these vegetables and fruits need a pollinator. At least 20 to 30% of the food are pollinated by insects. So this is the world map of, depends on pollinator for, depends on the world map of the pollinator dependence. Coming from the agricultural products to bumblebees. In between, some slides are missing. May come in between. 1 second. We'll come to that later. How many of you like insects? I should ask you in the beginning itself. All of you like insects to eat? To eat insects? No. I asked how many of you like to eat insects? Nobody. haven't tried. Oh, I should have. In fact, I have a small cricketarium. We produce crickets and make choco cricket cookies and fried crickets. And more than 1,000 people have tried so far, and everybody liked it. It tastes like prawns, somebody say. So insect eating is not that rare as we think. Before you say no, you should remember this. The red color of your lipstick. Just imagine rubbing a F to your lips. The color is produced from cochineal insects. Even for your soft drinks, the color is from insects. And honey, I don't think honey is that without insects. It's all saliva of insects plus skews from the while skewing, they skews even the larvae and other things. So, and knowingly or unknowingly, each one of us consume at least 1 pound of half a kilo of insect every year, as you have stored green pest or other forms. And insects are consumed all over the world. Maybe 150 crore people consume insects, mostly our indigenous people. In India also, insects are consumed widely. From India's Northeast India, yeah.
With using ants.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Odisha, recently that government of India given GI tag to Kai chutney made up of that red and
Yes.
Ucophilus maragdina.
Yes. Ecophylla chutney is very popular in Karnataka, Odisha, Jharkhand. And India's northeast, we have documented more than 500 species of insects. And one of the most expensive food I saw also is from Northeast India, is the larvae of Asian giant honeybees. Sorry, Asian giant hornet. Asian, yeah.
Yes, sorry. The professor, just to say that there's also a big amount of insect protein in health supplements that are sold nowadays. So both for athletes or people going to the gyms and for people who have deficiencies in diets, elderly, sick people. So that's a big market nowadays also.
2 Olympics before, one Japanese athlete got a gold medal. And the media asked him, what is the secret? Because usually it's very difficult for the Asians to get a gold medal in the Olympics. And he said the secret is the insect protein, mainly from the hornets. And people of Northeast India even domesticate this giant hornet. And 1 kilo of the hornet larvae cost about 6,000 rupees. So they consider it as a high quality nutrition, and there's a reason. And in many part of the India, indigenous communities consume insects, and all over the India, all over the world also. And that could be the reason why. And insect protein is very good quality protein. And 2013, the Food and Agriculture Organization came with a dossier promoting edible insects. They try to promote it as a mini livestock. The reason is the carbon footprint of rearing insects is much less. If the human population increases and the protein consumption increases like today, by 2015, the globe has to face a big famine for the protein. To address that, FAO is suggesting people to start rearing and eating insects. It is good quality and also it is the carbon footprint, the usage of water, land, everything is much less when comparing with the major livestock. But we started the program with a different angle. In ATREE, I started the program on edible insect research. Because though Food and Agriculture organizations started promoting insects, now even in Europe or Australia or America, you get insects started pizzas or cookies or many products. There are a lot of cricket farms in Thailand, in Japan. It's becoming a big industry in the Southeast Asia. Even in India, many people have started many insect farms, especially for black soldier flies for the feed purposes. But when people start eating insects, we are all food adventurists. So far, we have rearing techniques only for 5 or 6 species. When we start eating insects, we'll look for more variety of taste. Once we start looking for the variety, our focus will be to places like Northeast India where they consume a big diversity of insects. There almost, out of these 500 species, almost all species are collected from the wild. So when there is a market outside, obviously everybody want to make a little excess money. It will lead to the over harvesting of the insects from the wild. That can be a threat to the wild population of those insects. And what's the solution? Start developing rearing methods for more and more edible species of insects. So there is a growing buzz about insects, and see there is a even research industry is increasing, and insects are rich in protein, and that also is good quality protein. Black soldier fly is a very hot species, a preferred species for rearing, because it can be easily bred in the organic waste. So we developed a biopod, a simple technique for rearing black soldier flies in the households. If you go to our villages, most houses keep small poultry. In such houses, if they can keep the kitchen waste to this and introduce black soldier fly, or in many places it can come by itself, and the larvae get collected in the side chamber, which is a very good feed for poultry, aqua, or pet. These are some products we have developed over the years. And that's how the circular economy works. So it's the best example of circular economy. From the waste, we produce good quality protein, and again it is. And now it is attempted in many poultry farms, because black soldier fly can easily breed in the poultry waste. I always like to ask questions. Should answer me. How many insects are there on the world? We are talking a lot about insects, their importance. They are the biggest herbivore. They play important role in nutrient cycling. They are the most important pollinators. So how many species of insects are there on Earth?
Yeah. Maybe 1 million.
What's the mean diameter of the Earth? We have an answer. How many stars are there in the Milky Way? We have an answer. How many genes are there in a small virus particle? We have an answer. What's the mass of an electron? We have an answer. And I borrow an answer from late Professor U. Wilson. We don't know, not to the nearest order of magnitude, but still there are many estimates. Accordingly, 69% of the of the species, or 84% of the animals, are insects on Earth, and this is a estimate. About 1/3 of world's crop production depends on pollination. Most of our forest plants depend on insects. Much of the nutrient cycling is done by insects, and they are the bottom of the food pyramid. And they are the predators. They are the ecosystem engineers. They are important in biomass recycling. and they're used in biologically controlled, and we model them for many modern technologies. And do we need insects? It's a bit political. We can live without tigers and elephants, but we cannot live without bees and beetles. So now the second part of the story. Do we have time? Super. Okay, I'll finish. So this is the situation we face today. The winters are getting colder and colder. The summers are getting colder and hotter. The rains turns to cloudbursts, and pour when we don't need it. The glaciers are melting. The rivers swell and swallow the villages. Seas rise to claim the land. The food production is declining. Fishes are disappearing. And grasshoppers swarm to locusts. 2 years back, the locust swarms from the African Saharas reached even Bombay, Maharashtra. What makes the grasshoppers to turn to locust? When it rains in the deserts, there will be a lot of production of the plants. So the grasshoppers also multiply. They start moving. They start moving to greener pastures, and they swarm to become locusts. And the temperature is increasing. Last year, we said, okay, last June was the hottest month in last 100 years. This year we say, this July is the hottest month. And next year, we may say, the temperature is getting, our earth is getting hotter and hotter. So do you believe in climate change? Whether we believe it or not, we are experiencing it. Do you think it is due to some celestial phenomenon happening elsewhere outside the earth? Is it due to some solar flares or something else? So I too believe that it's all man-made. It's all anthropogenic. It's a global change expert says, we are certain that they are going on, and we are certain that they are human caused. Locust attack. How do the insects respond to climate change? One, as it's getting hotter, towards the higher elevation, towards the higher latitude, it is colder. From the lower elevation or lower latitude, the insects move to the higher, colder elevations. This is the bumblebee story I was mentioning. It's by one of our PhD students, Shweta Basnet. She was studying the pollinators of bumblebees. She saw in the lower elevations, rhododendrons are pollinated by birds. As it goes higher, it is flies, and the highest elevation it is actually the bees. Bees are the major pollinators. That doesn't mean that the bees are not there in the lower elevation, but the major pollinators towards the higher elevation is, and as the temperature increases, the pollinators are also getting gradually replaced. And finally, as in the previous slides, the rhododendrons and the bumblebees are now facing extinction due to the climate change. This is a study by Dr. Andrews, my PhD student, on how the ants respond to elevations. So his finding is that the major driver of ant diversity is heat, the temperature. As the temperature increases, ants may move upwards, and gradually the species which are occupying the higher elevations may go extinct. When did you see the firefly last time? Huh? Have you all seen fireflies at some time? Okay. What happened to our fireflies? Fireflies are still there, but you should go to this is the night sky map of the world. The fireflies communicate through their light. They find their mate with the help of the light they produce. When we lit up all our surroundings, what happens? The light would be visible to their mate. So they will move away or die. That's why we don't see many of the fireflies today. And even the behavior is being changed by the insect behavior is changed. This is a very classic example. In Australia, it's long back itself, the scientists reported the jewel beetle, the brown jewel beetle of Australia, trying to mate with the beer bottles. Why do they try to mate with the beer bottle? They saw the male beetle, the jewel beetles are swarming to the empty bottles thrown all over the wilderness. The mates were recognized based on the bright yellow, brown color. And this poor male beetles thought that the beer bottle is a huge female. They were trying to mate with that. And either they were eaten by some ants or they fall died there itself. And it forced the company to change this design of their beer bottle. Rise of carbon. We all produce a lot of carbon. You see here is the Zoom cultivation, Zoom burning. So how the carbon dioxide is impacting insect diversity? Carbon dioxide means temperature also is increasing. So there's a temporal difference. Usually during the winter period, we don't see many insects. As the temperature varies, their phenology also respond to that. So once the insect phenology changes, that can impact the pollen, the flowering plants too. Then there's a spatial mismatch. They can move towards the cooler places, or as the physiology changes, their homothermic insects, their body temperature also is changing accordingly. So their physiology also become faster. They tend to eat a lot, and their body size also increases. That means the pest incidence also can be. So increased overwintering, they spend more time sleeping, and their population size, distribution, everything can be impacted. And as I mentioned, that this all network, any one connection is gone, that is impacting the rest of the work too. And the great insect decline is proven today. It's happening. This is a very recent study which shows aquatic insects are increasing and the terrestrial insects are declining. The author said the reason for aquatic insects to increase could be due to the increasing water quality. But I don't buy to that. I think that more pollution, more organic material to the waters is increasing the population of the insects there. Not only that, it is impacting human life. Now, this is a very recent study published in the Science. This is the dengue diseases are increasing due to the climate change, because the dengue spreading mosquitoes, their abundance is increasing and they're spreading across the world. So it is applicable to all sort of insect-borne diseases. So the question, should we conserve insects? No. In that case, how to conserve insects? Is there a bias in our conservation strategies? Unfortunately, even today, when talking about conservation, although we preach a lot about need for conserving the maximum habitat heterogeneity. Talk about conserving all sort of biodiversity. Still, our conservation efforts are focusing only on a few species. If you talk about conservation, if you ask anybody about conservation, biodiversity conservation in Gujarat, they say Gir. As if there are no other biodiversity present in Gujarat. Even the data is deficient. As a result of the wrong conservation policy, our protected areas are becoming grazing lands, cattle grounds. We see a lot of herbivore population is increasing in all our protected areas. If you take Nagarholi National Park, you will see 30 or 40,000 cheetal grazing there. In that 540 square kilometers, 60% is teak plantation. When 40,000 cheetal, 10,000 gaur, 15,000 sambar, and maybe about 8,000 elephants are grazing, how can the quality of the forest, how can the biodiversity, the real biodiversity of the forest can be maintained? And that is leading to the human-animal conflicts outside the areas. So what we need is we need a strategy for conserving insects, and that should be focusing on the habitat heterogeneity. And there are a lot of gaps when we don't have enough scientists, enough people, no institutions for studying insect diversity. And we have to engage the public also, make them aware about the importance. The most important is even conserve even the smallest of the green patches. So prioritize habitat instead of species, conserve habitat heterogeneity, conserve even small fragments, prepare green list of species, and consider all other species threatened. Atmotsavam pashyetapi kitapi pidikam. This is from Ayurveda. Always consider even ants and insects equal to thyself. Amen. Thank you.